Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Rochester Equity and Access Leadership Real Conversations program. I'm Sarah Mangelsdorf, President of the University of Rochester, and I'm so pleased to be with you here today. Well, not really here, but on Zoom with all of you. The Real Conversations series launched last September to spark genuine discussions and candid dialogue around equity and measurable, meaningful change. The slate of programs over the past year has been terrific, very thought-provoking and action-oriented. If you haven't already sampled some of the other programs, they were recorded and you can go online and check them out. What has made these real conversations so special and so powerful are the voices of our alumni. We have benefited from the expertise and experiences of so many of our accomplished alumni. There has been candor, strength, and bravery in the conversations. I'm incredibly grateful to all who have participated. Today marks the final session of Real Conversations for this academic year, and it's appropriate that the focus should be our celebration of Juneteenth. This program comes to you with partnership from the Black Alumni Network, our host today, as part of their month-long celebration of Black excellence. I'm extremely grateful to the co-chairs of the Black Alumni Network, Dr. Ashley Campbell, Dr. Dina Geiler, and University trustee Emerson Fullwood for leading the way to unite, engage, and empower our Black alumni, students, faculty, staff, and parents and friends. Our Black Alumni Network helped conceptualize our first Juneteenth celebration 1 year ago. And today's program explores the historical context of Juneteenth and the evolution of emancipation with Dr. Scott Brown, a class of 1989 alumnus from the University of Rochester and an associate professor of African American Studies and History at UCLA. I am looking forward to Dr. Brown's presentation and our discussion. But before we begin, our minds and also our ears are in for a treat. Jasmine Saunders is a rising senior soprano at the Eastman School of Music, where she is studying voice performance. She's a native of Rochester, and she is the current recipient of the William Warfield Scholarship. She also serves as the vice president of the Black Student Union at Eastman. Jasmine's most recent performances include Eastman Opera Theater's production of Dominic Argento's Postcard from Morocco, in which she sang the role of the lady with the hand mirror. Jasmine has prepared for us a performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing, a song often referred to as the Black national anthem in the United States. Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you again to the University of Rochester Black Alumni Network and all our colleagues in the Office of Equity Inclusion and the Office of Alumni Engagement for this real conversation today. To all who are watching, enjoy the performance in the program. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Jasmine Saunders.
Lift every voice and sing to the heaven. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise from listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. God of our weary years, from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, we will stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Thank you. Before we begin our program, may I please have permission from the elders to speak? Thank you. I'll now turn things over to Baba Norwood, to me, and to many of you, Reverend Wade Norwood, to begin our program. Baba Norwood, we honor you as a member of the class of 1985 of the college and the proud parent of 2 University of Rochester alumni. I understand that you were also honored at the Arts and Sciences commencement exercises just a few weeks ago with the 2021 Arts and Sciences Distinguished Alumnus Award. Baba Norwood, we are grateful for your presence today.
Thank you so very much. And if I may, my friends, let me start by talking to you about families and family reunions. And allow me to start by reminding you that as emancipation was embraced by our forebearers 160 odd years ago, at that moment when it looked as if captivity had really fallen apart, African America turned its attention to beginning the long process of trying to find family members from whom they'd been separated. That quest to claim identity and reclaim connectedness was what Tupac was talking about when he asked, "Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's laws wrong, it learned to walk without having feet." Funny, it seems to by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else even cared. And I want to start here because I want you to know that learning, discovering, healing, and creating are central, not just to this university, but to our history. And that's what this Black Alumni Network is about. That's why these real conversations have been awesome parts of my journey of reuniting with so many of you, not just as fellow alum, but as family. And they've demonstrated how, and they've demonstrated why. We just keep on pushing. And that's why we're gathered together today. Juneteenth, also known as National Freedom Day, is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of the enslavement of African Americans in the United States. And as we all witnessed yesterday, this president of the United States has signed legislation that makes Juneteenth now a national holiday. Throughout history and through this weekend, communities will host events, and some will include formal readings of the Emancipation Proclamation, readings of the 13th Amendment, or of a local declaration honoring the end of this nation's centuries of enslaving Africans and peoples of African descent. In James C. Anyike's African American Holidays text, he writes that the reading of these documents symbolizes how our ancestors stood in front of the big house, to be informed of their legal freedom. In our university community, throughout the month of June, the Black Alumni Network is taking part in Juneteenth celebrations that will include fun, food, family, music, and dancing. And heeding the wisdom of Maya Angelou, our celebrations are our delight in the beauty of the butterfly we have become, as we grimly acknowledge the price that the caterpillars paid in order for us to earn these wings. Let me also say that after I offer prayer, the next voice that you hear will be that of Brother Dr. Scott Brown from the dynamic U of R class of 1989. Brother Brown is an associate professor of African American Studies and History at the University of California, Los Angeles. And as my backyard adjoins with his parents' home, this brother literally is my neighbor. And I'm so very proud and grateful that he is with us, back with family, and through the magic of technology, is home today. Brother Brown is the author of the book Fighting for Us and has penned numerous articles on African American history, social political movements, music, and popular culture. And he is a contributing author and the editor of the book Discourse on Africana Studies. An accomplished performing artist in his own right and a musicologist, I'm excited by the fact that our brother, the esteemed Dr. Brown, is in the process of completing a book project exploring the city of Dayton, Ohio, as a 1970s musical hotbed of soul and funk bands. And since so much of my personal soundtrack and the theme music inside my head includes the work of the Ohio Players, the Zap Band, and Lakeside, I'm really looking forward to the release of this upcoming work. Brother Brown has appeared as an expert commentator on African American music and popular culture for many programs on television, radio, and social media, including KLRU, National Public Radio, Sirius XM Radio, DATV, BET Centric, TV1, and VH1. And additionally, our brother has appeared in several documentaries on the civil rights and Black Power movements, including the PBS documentary, The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution. As you prepare to receive him, let me, in this vein of Black music history, offer as a prayer the words of the late Reverend Thomas Dorsey. His name may be familiar to some, as in 1932, Reverend Dorsey was moved to the verge of emotional collapse as a result of his inconsolable bereavement at the death of his wife, Nettie, in childbirth, and that of their newborn son mere minutes later. Hymnologists know that Dorsey, at the very utmost of his strength, recalled that in the middle of the night, in this period of bereavement, he sat down at a piano and, not knowing what else to do, in tears, he put the following prayer to music. And it's the prayer that I offer for our work and for this celebration. When our ways grow drear, precious Lord, linger near. When our life seems almost gone, hear our cry. Hear our call, hold our hands. Hold our hands lest we fall. Take our hands, precious Lord, lead us on. When the darkness appears, And Lord, when the night draws near, when the day is past and gone, when at the river, dear God, we stand, please guide our feet and just hold our hand. Take our hands, precious Lord, and please lead us on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It is so much of an honor. Thank you to President Mingelsdorf, Reverend, good brother, doctor. If you don't have enough doctorates, we're going to give you another honorary one for that very moving and inspiring prayer and meditation that's going to get us through, get us over the hump. It is such an honor to be here. Let me extend greetings to all of you from the Brown family. We are from Rochester, New York. My parents, James and Maxine Brown, and my sisters, Nikki and Kimberly, send us all warm greetings. As was mentioned earlier, I attended the U of R 1985 through 1989. And in addition to the wider, exceptional student body that the University of Rochester had then, more specifically, the Black students at the U of R, especially those who worked in the Black Students Union, those who worked in organizations like the South African Awareness Committee. I had an organization that we were dealing with the Coalition on Oppression in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the Coalition of Black and Latino Women's Organization. There were so many very powerful groups. I have to say that I have not been around a cohort of people since then as fine, as excellent as the students, especially the Black students who came together in my years at the University of Rochester. The saying goes that if you can judge and see the success of the fruit, you must say something about the root. The roots of those trees and the fruit that it bore are evident. And I wish I can go through all the names of the very successful scholars, activists, administrators that come out of that cohort in the 80s. Now, I'm not saying that we were better or that we were somehow behind those that came before or those who came after. But I can tell you, when you look around and see, there was something special about the late 1980s at the University of Rochester. That's a story to be told on another occasion. Among the many accomplishments of that group of students, those who were older, the upperclassmen, those who were in my group, the freshmen, and those who came after. Among the many accomplishments are collectively this group of students made its own contribution to the heroic struggle to end apartheid in South Africa. There were activists local that were in sync with the divestment movement, which students all over the country, and specifically those of us at University of Rochester, participated in. And we were victorious. We also completed the process, a long struggle, to establish the Frederick Douglass Center for African and African American Studies. That came to be in 1986. But I can't just talk generally. I'm gonna have to do some name dropping. Is that okay? I know that name dropping is really not always looked upon favorably, but you know, I've been in California for some time. So in that spirit, I think I'm going to have to bring a little bit of Hollywood to the game and name some names. What I will remind you though, when I do drop names, I'll let you know that I'm aware that I'm dropping names, if that's a fair exchange. Let me first start by just naming the teachers, the staff members, the mentors, the professionals that mentored us. Some of them are no longer with us. They are with us in spirit. And some of us we are blessed to still have in our midst, but they must be named. Asim Asante, Daryl Boone, Paul Burgett, Dr. Paul Burgett, Dr. Fred Jefferson, Professor Karen Fields, Professor Joseph Inakori, Professor Teresa Gilson, Jackie Levine in academic advising, Professor Ann Lutkus, Professor Elias Mandala, Professor Jesse Moore, Reverend Dr. Elvin Paris, Professor Tiffany Patterson, Professor Julius Thompson. All of them were partners. Some people my mind in its limitation didn't think of, but know that our class would not have succeeded in what we achieved without these professionals that took care of us and guided us. I had also want to give a quick shout to my Rochester community mentors, Gerald and Terry Shaka, my first bass guitar teacher, Ronnie Dorsey, the Radiance Band, and Wendy White Spraggins. I first heard about Juneteenth in my teenage years when I started to play with local bands in Rochester, New York. Every summer, Rochester would have the Highland Bowl Festival, which would be a kind of battle of the bands. As you know, Rochester is just 1 hour east of Buffalo. Buffalo had a summer festival with bands similar to the one that we had, but it was even larger, called Juneteenth. I associated that event with ingathering, with coming together, with hearing inspiring sounds, and in between the music, in between the greetings, we would always get political messages urging us to participate in electoral politics, urging the community to come together and show solidarity with one another. As Reverend Norwood mentioned, just yesterday, the federal government lent its official sanction to Juneteenth. Juneteenth, as was said earlier, is a day that commemorates the liberation, Black liberation from slavery in the United States, celebrated on June 19th. Juneteenth has reigned as a long-standing African-American freedom celebration and sits along with a myriad of Black freedom celebrations. The establishment of commemorative days acknowledging the demise of enslavement is not just a US phenomenon. Throughout the African diaspora, the defeat of slavery has been honored in differing forms and calendar dates, often called in the Caribbean, in Latin America, in other parts of the world, Emancipation Day. We are glad that the US government has made it to the party, but let's get the chronology correct. We didn't necessarily get to the party first. So many nations have made the abolition of slavery as a very, very important watershed moment worthy of calendar space. It's not where you begin, but it's where you end. And we are glad that we are here to acknowledge the international significance of the abolition of slavery. Nearly 40 years ago, the previous holiday to receive federal government sanction, actually, was, perhaps not uncoincidentally, the Martin Luther King commemorative holiday, which was passed in 1983 after some 15 or so years of struggle from virtually days after this heroic defender of civil rights was assassinated. Though a much more recent holiday, it, like Juneteenth, has its roots in community. And this is what I would like to stress as we talk about Juneteenth moving forward. There are a couple of ways that the embrace of a holiday can turn out. There is a tradition that honors the aspirations, the everyday people that made this tradition a lived one. There's also another possibility, one that I hope that we can avoid through conversations like this, and that is appropriation. And the latter does not confront adequately the deep messaging of the holiday Juneteenth in its mere existence that I'll mention to you now. Juneteenth offers a special opportunity to reflect on the question of what freedom or liberation means. Now, many scholars like Eric Foner and others have talked about the ethos of life and the ethos of the American people as one that is centered around this question of freedom. I'd like to possibly throw in liberation rather than freedom. And freedom is a great word. I think that's a perfect word for this. However, let's be sure we're aware of what kind of freedom we're talking about. Of course, we all feel free. Well, I shouldn't say all of us. I know that for some people, freedom can be narrowed down to just merely the personal sphere. But freedom in this case is talking about collective conditions, things that we share that improve the condition of humanity. Obviously, the answer to the question of what freedom means surely will be dynamic, always layered, and always responsive to the conditions of the period in which it was raised. Today's goalpost for what many would aspire to achieve as a defining objective in the quest for freedom is oftentimes, as history has taught us, tomorrow's insufficient achievement. Necessary, but not sufficient. Because as we reconfigure our ideas about what freedom means, they're often shifting, changing, or we become more conscious of various modes of oppression that also manifests and change over time. So this is an ongoing engagement with the best of what humanity can deliver. I didn't come to arrive at this view incidentally, by the way. The very origins of Juneteenth present an inherent critique of officialdom and government pronouncement as the driving force in granting liberation. It has built into its own origins an alternative to a self-congratulatory national mythology. I was taught in elementary school, like many of you watching, maybe a lot more informed now, but I was taught that President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, issued on January 1st, 1863, that proclamation freed the slaves. In fact, this mythology is still embedded in the newness of our engagement with Juneteenth, and we have to be mindful of this. A fairly reputable cable news network, who will go unnamed, reinscribed the idea of saying that enslaved Black folks in Southeast Texas did not, and I'm quoting them directly, learn that they were free until June 19th of 1965. Actually, freedom in the story of the great overturning of enslavement was not grounded in a pronouncement or proclamation, but rather the defeat of the slaveholders under the weight of a Union army, buttressed into victory in large measure because of the swelling of its fighting ranks by Blacks who enlisted to take up arms against slavery. Some were formerly enslaved. Some escaped right into the Union Army's ranks. Some had the daily experience of a limited kind of freedom, not being enslaved, but still devoted their time, energy, and life to overturning it. This was, in the words and writings of W.E.B. Du Bois's book, Black Reconstruction, a truly revolutionary moment. He talks about it as a general strike. Earl Henderson, in his book, The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized, talks about it as indeed an American slave revolution, the Civil War. Freedom was made real by the hundreds of thousands who throughout the duration of the war escaped, sabotaged, and worked to undermine the institution of chattel slavery in the United States. Enslaved Africans were not freed by decree, but through struggle. Freedom was made real, was not proclaimed. So when the Union Army gets to Southeast Texas, of course, this is some time after the proclamation. This is June 1865. The reality of freedom had to come with a changing of the political dynamic. And that political dynamic would change throughout the country at different times and places. And I share that with you to be sure that we place the agency of Juneteenth with the people that brought it into existence. Juneteenth in this moment calls upon us to grapple with enslavement, as in the words of historian Jeffrey Osler, name drop, y'all, a foundational crime in the making of this country, right alongside the dispossession and genocidal violence against Native Americans. Now, this may not seem like a revelation to many of us, but it stands as an admonition that has fueled recent attacks on Black thought that grapples with the question of racial hierarchy. That's not new, but the recipient of these attacks is a school of thought called critical race theory, of which my colleague, name drop, Kimberly Crenshaw, is an important theorist. It's also a broader campaign to undo the ideological and political victories of the Black Lives Matter movement, the incredible organizing as well, and leadership of Black women, and by extension, the growing consciousness of young people of all racial backgrounds. The terms systemic racism are no longer something that's just exclusive to a small body. They have become now a part of the discourse on race, and there is pushback because of that very potent analysis of a reality that we've already come to know. Juneteenth is an acknowledgement also of one of the great social wonders of the world. How is it that Africans in the diaspora and continent have managed to assert a high level of humanity while in the midst of such enveloping inhumanity? I had the privilege of interviewing the great cultural historian, name drop, Sterling Stuckey, who summarized the impact of the enslaved person in history. I want to quote him. He said, when I look at the history of Black people in America, the major contributions came from the most oppressed. The creators of slave bards, songs, and tales, they created the greatest art in this country. Tied to that are the uses to which the intellect of slaves was put in solving some fundamentally intellectual problems. In order to help their people become essentially one people, they had to grapple with this problem of coming from different parts of Africa. Some values were similar to others, others were dissimilar. That, to me, was the supreme intellectual achievement of Blacks in North America, an astonishing intellectual achievement. This generation, through its own encounter with the limits of freedom, as imagined previously, we've got so many ebbs and flows here, periods of collective optimism and periods of confronting disappointing realities. But this generation, in its embrace of Juneteenth, in its renewed interest in the space, in the calendar carved out, what some would call the protest calendar, which has Black History Month and Kwanzaa and Black Love Day and Martin Luther King Day. There are so many days that their alternativity is a part of their important intervention. This generation has leaped forward into Juneteenth, fueled by the latest lunge in the pendulum swings of elevated expectations and danger-filled realities. In this new context, Juneteenth has found us through its own unpredictable, nonlinear, extra-spatial, Sankofa-esque pathway, tracking us down like a producer's MPC, scrambling the field hollers, bending the blue notes and saxophone screams, driven by the auto tunes of a people who will continue to improvise and reimagine what freedom means, given the ever-changing contexts and dialogues with the wider world and within the world of African-American community that drive new answers and new discoveries in this quest to achieve liberation. I'm going to stop here. As you know, I'm just starting to get warmed up, but we want to save time for dialogue. And coming after Reverend Wade Norwood, I couldn't help but feel that sense of connection to both the past and the future. And it's something that distance, some ideas of refinement have to be discarded, and we must engage and wrap our arms around. So thank you. I look forward to a dialogue now with Ashley Campbell, who's a PhD and fellow person who's doing big things. I shouldn't say fellow person because I'm not doing big things like she's doing in Rochester. And so we're going to have a discussion here and kind of pull out some things to focus on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brother Doctor. You know, it's such an awesome piece that you've reminded us of the importance, of course, of Juneteenth, but also reminded us of the complexity of our history, our tie, not only in America, but also within the world. And so I appreciate you centering that knowledge for us, especially for those who are new to the conversations when we talk about history, especially Black American history or just Black history in general. And then those who are scholars and practitioners of understanding what this work is, what it means, and how we actually live and move in space. And so I do have a question for you just to kind of get us started with all of this goodness that's going on right now. And one of the questions that we have to kind of start with is, what else can we do to stress the importance of supporting one another throughout the entire year and not just on Juneteenth?
Well, I think, that's a great question because, and this is where I think that the intervention, the existence of Juneteenth for all of these years, it's always been one of the many occasions for people of African ancestry in the US and then other emancipation days to ingather and to do so in a way that affirms human dignity and also in a way that raises awareness about our own constant improvisations in the cultural sphere. I think one thing that's important about all of these interventions, because we live in a society and in a nation that is so good at packaging, repackaging, and sometimes depoliticizing cultural creativity. We have to be sure that when we say that we want to reflect on the meaning of a principle, we want to reflect on what MLK Day means. We want to reflect on that it's a serious encounter like the one that we're having today. We have to also deal with the fact that these calendar interventions can always be bolstered and strengthened by further institutional support. So what happens is we cannot let, what I don't want to see happen, we cannot let Juneteenth, in my opinion, and this is my view, I'm not speaking for anybody but Dr. Scott, that's okay. We cannot let this be a day that affirms the notion of American exceptionalism. It should be a day that reminds the country that for all of its very specific, important, and powerful attributes, that this question of freedom has not been systematically distributed, that it's a part of who this country is. It's a part of who we are. And so I think that's really part of how we have to tackle these questions. I'm freestyling here, but when I say American exceptionalism, I'm talking about the idea somehow that left to the engine of its own inception, there's a linear movement toward progress on its own. I think what Juneteenth suggests is that it is the imagination of people in struggle that has expanded the realm of freedom and possibility, not just the words in writing, but they are prescribed by race, class, gender, and all kinds of other identicalities.
Yes, yes. Whew. Just as you are there, I would love to get your take on, really recognizing that, and you hit on a little bit of this during your actual remarks, that this is not an opportunity for appropriation, right? So because it is now a marker on the calendar, yes, we all can celebrate this, but really talk about how important it is for us as a people, as Black people, or people or persons of African descent, to really actually recognize the importance of celebrating our cultures, our holidays, all of those different things. Talk about the essence of why that's so crucial for us, especially now.
Well, I think it's very crucial now because, and it's not a simple binary appropriation, liberation. In many respects, some of these issues are very intertwined. The way that we get messages out, the way that we interact, the way that we share, we're sharing space, both in technology, we're dependent on all kinds of accumulations of private wealth as the instrument, of communication and dialogue. So there's a certain amount of appropriation that we have to be, I don't think the question is, the real question is the one I think, Dr. Campbell, that you have suggested here, and that is, it's up to the community that Juneteenth serves fundamentally to ensure its meaning.
Yes.
And that's a hard one. That's a very tall order. And I also don't think that I don't think we've lost MLK Day. I don't think we've lost Kwanzaa. I think it's not so much of a get to a goal line or lose a down or two. there are always going to be a concurrent unfolding of traditions and practices that are much more communal, grounded alongside other things. The question is, can we organize to support the kinds of rituals, institutions, organizations, individuals that have the capacity to maintain and expand the communal foundations of these interventions? That's the question, and that's, trust me, if I had the answers and I could execute it, we'd be free now. We wouldn't be having this conversation.
Definitely. I agree with you 100%. 100%.
As we say, trust and believe, we'd be free. We'd be having a nonstop jam session up in here.
Absolutely.
We can still do that, but we still have to take time to make that culture fit within the context of our ongoing struggle for freedom.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for making sure that you hit on that main piece. It's our responsibility, you know, it's a part of the work that we have to do as a people. I want to give one more question. It might be another, we'll see. But one of the audience members would like to know, or would like for you to expand or expound upon the mythologies that persist about Juneteenth, which are reflected in the news source that you quoted.
Sure. Well, the mythology being that people did not learn. They didn't know they were free.
Yes.
You know, they would, you know, enslavement just happens because people just didn't know that they could just walk away. But enslavement, of course, and I'm not speaking to that questioner because I think the questioner already knows, but they want me to explain further, and I get that. Enslavement happens as a systematic, regularized set of violences against the body and the soul. And the reason why the enslaved Africans in Southeast Texas did not free themselves is because the Union Army that changed the balance of power, the Union Army replete with Black soldiers who had joined forces, did not get there, okay, until June. So it's not a question of, oh, they just didn't know they were free. Oh, because see, that mythology presupposes the idea that the proclamation itself, now the proclamation was a very important development because it actually gave the purpose of defeating slavery to the Civil War. And that had an entirely different meaning to Black people. And so you can see why it's important. We don't want to undermine its importance, but it was not transformative as a declarative. And even after Robert E. Lee surrendered, there were still pockets of slaveholding throughout the Confederacy, all right? And so that's the reason for the challenge to the mythology that's inherent in the origins of Juneteenth itself. It challenges the idea that officialdom delivers freedom more so than political realities on the ground that people experience. Is that, I know I'm, trying to, it's a real art form that I haven't mastered. Trying to simplify a lot of things. We pull all-nighters reading and studying, and then we've got to try to find a way to articulate this deep concept that we believe we have. And sometimes I fall short, so forgive me if I did.
You have not fallen short, dear brother. I will just share that, there's several different elements that can be teased from what you have shared with us. Of course, not only, reminding us the importance of really learning you, taking it all the way back to just the beginning. You got to know who you are. You got to know where you are within the context of where we are right now in society, and understand how do you unpack that knowledge, practicing Sankofa, and then figure out how do you actually move the needle forward through some shape, form, or fashion, given all the different complexities that are kind of hitting us all at one time. So I definitely think you have given that to us in a very unique way. So we definitely appreciate.
I also want to say something else, if I can, quickly. There's this, and certainly Reverend Norwood can expound on this. This idea that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, right? It is very important that we mark, if we're going to talk about when we mark emancipation, that we start that calendar with the very last holdout that got taken down. So yes, it may come a year and a half after the proclamation, may even have come after the Confederate surrender. But you see, that notion of we are each other's keeper. So you can't talk about emancipation just as a kind of marker. It has to have lived realities on the ground. And so that's why I say the first shall be last, the last shall be first. It's one of the last places where enslavement was overturned, but it is our first day of talking about the abolition, of commemorating the abolition. Then there are other, let me be clear, there are other Freedom Day celebrations. They're called Jubilee Day, Freedom Day, there's all kinds of time. They have different calendar dates based on the circumstances that are distinct for those areas.
Yes.
Just like is the case with Galveston.
Yes. Yes. Yes, good brother. I'm just elated. I'm elated that we're at least having this conversation, because it is a needed conversation to have. Yeah. And knowing that, it's not over, right? True to who we are as a people, there isn't an end. It always going to circle back around, right? We are circular people in the way that we understand life, in the way that we function and operate. So this conversation hasn't ended. It's continuing. It will go on and on to the day's end, and that won't end, because we know that there is no ending.
There is no end, because see, when we think that we've reached a plateau, we discover that you can only ride that high for so long. Absolutely. And then, but on the other side, no matter how far you fall, that descent downward is also not sustainable. We will rise, you see? So, and these kinds of things cannot always be anticipated in a scientific way, but we know that, as the great philosopher Frankie Beverly said, there will be joy and pain, sunshine and rain. And that's a great kind of natural analogy to the consistency of elevated expectations and disappointing realities that reinvent themselves over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think we are ready to put ourselves in a different headspace, in the sense of now trying to affirm all of this goodness that we've packaged, not only today, but just for years that has existed. So if you don't mind, can you let the people know about the Nguzo Saba?
Oh yes, the 7 principles, the Nguzo Saba.
Yeah.
My first book was called Fighting for Us, and it was about the group called the US Organization, that the chairman and main philosopher theorist is Maulana Karenga. And he, thinking about this question of culture, designed a value system called, in English, the 7 principles. These concepts are articulated in Kiswahili, because in the 1960s and 70s, Kiswahili being a non-ethnic or more of a trader's language in East and Central Africa, the Organization of African Unity embraced it for a period of time as a kind of Pan-African language. So those 7 principles are called the Nguzo Saba. Dr. Maulana Karenga is fond of saying, if we would practice some of these principles some of the time, a whole new change would happen. And so that was the foundation for the holiday that started off as a holiday just among a small group of people in Los Angeles that has grown to become an international holiday that push these 7 principles at its core and have rituals to commemorate those principles. I was going to go into them, but I think I'm going to need some help here. I think I want to make this, I would like to have this be more participatory when it comes to the Nguzo Saba. So is there a way that we can open this up? Well, I'm waiting to see what I can see is the first principle. Aha. Umoja. No accident that that's the first principle. Umoja stands for unity.
Kujichagulia, self-determination, to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves.
Ujima, collective work and responsibility, to build and maintain our community together and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together.
Ujamaa, cooperative economics, to build and maintain our stores, shops, and other businesses and to profit from them together.
Nia, purpose, to make as our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness.
Kuumba, creativity, to do always as much as we can in the way that we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it.
Amani, and I'll say again, Amani, one more time. Amani, faith, to believe with all our heart in our parents, our teachers, our leaders, our people, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Brother Dr. Scott Brown to introduce his musical premiere. We will definitely be delighted. We welcome you back, brother.
All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share. I am just setting things up. Now, let me tell you a story about the song. Is called Serenity. As you know from my discussions, I don't like calling myself a frustrated musician because I've lately been having some opportunities to make some music. And so maybe those frustrations are being sort of alleviated by these kinds of opportunities. Let me say that 1 hour to the west is Buffalo, New York, the home of Rick James. And I was hoping I would be the next Rick James before he got the kind of reputation that, you know, we kind of think of today. The jury is still out. I think I still got a little bit of time. No, but in all seriousness, the song is called Serenity. I thought it was very befitting for a very interesting reason. Last year, during the heat of the COVID crisis, my mother said to me that she had met a young man that she was introduced to by her good friend, Alicia Ward. She said that this young man was a serious music producer and that I should talk to him. Once she said that he's the son of Wade Norwood, of course, then I had to, you know, take it very seriously. I said, well, I at least gotta hear what this young man is all about. His name is Chris Norwood, and he is a phenomenal young producer and musician. I guess the moral of the story is what? Mama knows best. Listen to your mama. Pay attention. That's one moral of the story. The other thing is that this idea of reconnecting with family that Wade Norwood shared with us earlier has all kinds of unforeseen benefits. And this was one of them. Now, this is why I wanted to tell you this story when it comes to Juneteenth. The production company that Chris Norwood has is called Suburban Plaza. His artist name within that production group is Jerry Rescue. Now, 1 hour to the east of Rochester and Syracuse, in 1850, an enslaved African who was at the risk and was actually captured due to the powers given by the fugitive slave law, which put all Black folks in danger. The community rallied and rescued this enslaved African. His nickname was Jerry. He didn't use a lot of enslaved Africans upon arriving at freedom would no longer use the names that reflected their connections to the slaveholders. So he was known as Jerry. You can find out more about him. But the city of Syracuse, among all the different freedom celebrations, had a holiday called Jerry Rescue Day. Now, Chris knew about the story of Jerry Rescue. He didn't know he had a holiday that can always be reinscribed, and it's a story of communities coming together to secure freedom for another human being. So it's a great story. It's one I wanted to share. The song that I want to share with you is called Serenity. It has a guest vocal appearance by Garfield Bright of the R&B group from the not from the 90s, but they were popular in the 90s. The R&B group called Shy. And Garfield is now also a PhD. I met him at a conference talking about music, and he walked up to me around 2006 or so and said, hey, I don't know if you know, but I was in a group called Shy. And I looked at him like, oh, wow. You know that little aura thing you see when you talk to and recognize a celebrity. We stayed in touch in 2013. He liked the music that I wrote, and we collaborated and came up with this song, Serenity. I'd like to share it with you. It also is available to listen to further on Bandcamp, and I believe we'll be posting a link on that. But let me go ahead on and play that for you.
You give me serenity 'cause I need to show it. I don't think you really notice how you're rocking my world. Every time I think about you, I can't picture life without you. It's dope to have someone I like that's actually my world. You give me serenity, and I wanna give you eternity. My baby, keep giving me vibration, vibration. You give me serenity, and I wanna give you eternity. My baby, keep giving me vibration, vibration. I don't think there's been a time that I really felt the need to find that. I really feel this natural kind of love when I'm around you. Searching for someone who gets it. I feel like there's something different. Could this be the one to get with? Yes, this one's about you. You give me serenity, and I wanna give you eternity. My baby, keep giving me vibration, vibration. You give me serenity, and I wanna give you eternity. My baby, keep giving me vibration, vibration. I'll build my world all around you, show you it's not a game. Searching the world, now I found you. I hope you feel me the same. Ooh, tell me your wishes, hopes and your dreams. Then tell me, what is this? Are you as dope as you seem, girl? You give me serenity, and I wanna give you eternity. My baby, keep giving me vibrations, vibrations. You give me serenity, and I wanna give you eternity. My baby, keep giving me vibrations, vibrations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just sincere thanks to all of you who are in attendance. We are grateful that we were able to be a part of this musical premiere, and hopefully you are able to allow those words to resonate with your spirit, especially when you think about the term serenity. What does that actually mean to you? Or when you think about the term liberation, hopefully you can take away from today's programming and our conversation some really key elements of what it means to actually sit and ponder and live with these terms that have been floating around, and really make sure that we understand what it means to actually celebrate and acknowledge what is afoot, and that is the celebration of Juneteenth. Another sincere round of thanks for all of the alumni, students, faculty, staff, community members who are part of this program today. I just want to share again, thank you, dear brother Brown, for being a part of this. It is definitely a huge thanks from so many of us, and we are grateful that you spent some time with us today. Special thanks to our baby sister, Miss Jasmine Saunders. Girl, you did your thing. We are here. You are a part of family. We got you. And we know that there will be awesome, awesome things that will come from you. Baba Norwood, we are sincerely grateful for you as well. Thank you for the opening. It gave us an opportunity to really center ourselves on the importance of why we are here today. And President Mangelsdorf, we are grateful for your presence as well. Thank you on behalf of all of the co-chairs of the Black Alumni Network, the executive committee, which is very new, of the Black Alumni Network, as well as the planning committee dedicated to pulling together a Juneteenth celebration for the university, as well as for the Black Alumni Network. We are grateful for everything today. I would like to acknowledge our captioner, Jane, for just your awesome work, our ASL interpreters, Talesi, as well as LaShonda for supporting our program today. We are grateful for you. We are hopeful, and we know that you will be back in the fall for more of this real conversations, honey. You cannot miss out on this. And of course, stay tuned for awesome things that will be coming from the Black Alumni Network. And finally, please make sure that you complete the link, which will have a survey enclosed. Take the moment just to kind of provide your feedback. It is helpful to all of us. And as we conclude with all of this goodness, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and have a joyful and celebratory and reflective Juneteenth. And as we say in many settings, it's a blessing. Ashe, 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 Sheo. Have a beautiful rest of your day.